use your 4.2 notes to accompany this video. Please fill in all notes and answer any questions which are not answered in this video that appear on the text unless you are told otherwise. On the text, I mean in the notes here. Okay, so 4.1 dealt with demand, 4.2 deals with supply. Before we get into looking at the differences on changes in supply and quantity supplied, review an important topic of profit. So profit is simply equal to the revenue, which is how much money a firm takes in minus their costs. And granted, there are fixed costs and variable costs. We'll deal with that later on. So if a company takes in $100 million, if their total costs are $90 million, then their profit is $10 million. We will look at a future point in activity on this question, how do firms determine their selling price that maximize profit. But for now, you do not need to worry about that. If you understand 4.1 well, which dealt with demand, then there are many similarities to section 4.2. So, in a supply curve is upward sloping, unlike the demand curve that was downward sloping. We have price on the y-axis and quantity, in this case quantity supplied, on the x-axis. So what this is, it's the amount that people are willing, and people really are, the producers are willing and able to sell during a specific period at a different price. So once again, for people, it's probably better to use, it is the business people, the suppliers. So businesses are willing and able to sell to this price. At a higher price, think of a can of Coke. If Coca-Cola can get 50 cents for that, maybe they'll supply 100 to St. Andrews. If they could get $2, they'd be willing to produce more, ship more to St. Andrews, and maybe to send 500. The law of supply, we have the law of demand. So this, unlike the law of demand, this is a direct relationship. If the price goes up, and this will be on the next page, the quantity supplied increases. The key word is a quantity supplied, and that represents a movement along the supply curve. So above, if the price is 50 cents at point A, they're willing to supply 100. If the price is $2, they're willing to supply more. They move up to point B at $2, they're willing to supply 500. Doesn't mean they can sell that much, just what they're willing to do. So the law of supply, similar to the law of demand. If price goes up, in this case, the quantity supplied increases. So it's the quantity supplied movement along the curve. This is why I said it's similar. They both represent a change in the quantity supplied, or quantity demand for law of demand, and it's a movement along the respective curve, not a shift in that curve. It is the only factor, the only way that you go from point A to point B for some product. It has to be a price change of that good. That's the only way you move along the curve, and that's said to be a change in the quantity supplied. That quantity is particularly important. So here's an example. As soon as you see price, you'll see maybe it's the price of a related good, but here it's the price of bottled water, and we're seeing how that affects bottled water. So it's a price change of the same good, so that is a change in the quantity supplied. And if the price is higher, businesses are happy. They're happy, they supply more, so that would be an upward shift along, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say shift, a movement, an upward movement along the supply curve, as I did above. If the price was lower, the price is higher, we move along the curve. Similar to what we did in market demand, the market demand is the sum of all the consumers. Well, so too with the market supply, but it's the sum of all the producers. So in this example, we have two different producers. We look at how much they're willing to produce at each price, and we sum them up. And this is the market demand. So the market supply. It is the sum of, in this case, the only two producers in this industry. Now, completely different, and as we did before, we're going to look at what causes the curve to shift. When we looked at demand, there were 5 factors that cause the demand curve to shift. It's very similar here as well. There are going to be factors, external factors not related to the price of the product, that cause the curve to shift. So a rightward shift is an increase in supply. A leftward shift would be a decrease in supply. And the reason why? So let's look at this point. If this is 100 at some price, let's say $2, if at the same price, $2, there is additional amount that's supplied, that's an increase in supply. What could cause it to shift? Well, think what makes businesses happy. If their costs go down, their input costs, example, if their labor cost, if they can pay their workers less money, if they pay their workers less money, they're happy, they're making more profit per unit, and they would therefore increase the supply, and that would be witnessed by that rightward shift and the supply curve. So once again, a change in supply is synonymous with saying a shift in the supply curve. It's any relevant factor other than the price of that good that affects the supply. Increase in supply causes a curve to shift rightward, and therefore at each price they're willing to supply more than they did before. So there were 5 factors that cause a shift in the supply curve. A little different but similar to demand. Well, of course, we have income when we help the change in income on the demand side. Well, on the supply side, don't think income. Think the income to the supplier is really profit, and what affects profit are costs. So the cost of input. So when input cost increases, if cost goes up, businesses are sad, they make less profit, and they would supply less. So suppose McDonald's has to pay their employees higher wages. That means their costs have gone up, their input cost. That's sad, so it causes the McDonald's to decrease the supply. It is not the change in price of McDonald's, so therefore it's a cost, it's an external factor, causes the supply curve to shift. So in this part here, right, so if we have some supply curve, I'm going to do the bottom one. If costs go down, businesses are happy, they make more money. If they make more money, they supply more. That would be a rightward shift in supply. So anytime demand or supply increase, the respective curve shifts rightward. Technology is another one. If technology improves, you think that's good for businesses. Technology can make more products at the same, at a lower cost, so their costs go down. So anything where costs go down, supply increases. So if there's a new procedure to extract oil from the ocean floor, think what happens to efficiency. Businesses are more efficient, they're happy, therefore they increase the supply. And once again, it's supply, not quantity supplied, because I did not speak about the price of oil changing. Back when we did demand, we had number of demanders. If there are more demanders, demand increase. Here we have more suppliers. If there's more suppliers, then supply increases. If there are fewer suppliers, then supply decreases. Expected future price is actually more important on this side than it was on the demand side. So once again, it's not the price today, expected future price. So suppose there's a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico heading to the oil refineries. So what do you think is going to happen to the price of oil? Well, our experiences here in Florida, clearly, or we expect prices to increase. That's not price today, it's price expectation. I think you're the supplier, you have a product you're going to sell. If you know you can get more of that product tomorrow, what are you going to do? Well, today, we're not talking about price change today, so it's going to be a change in supply, and actually you're going to supply less today. You're going to hold that inventory and you're going to supply more in the future. So if you expect prices to go up, as a consumer you want to buy more today, but as a supplier you want to supply less today, you supply more tomorrow, but that isn't the question here, and you can make more money. So if there's an expectation of price of a product increasing, this is future price, right? Price expectation is a future price. Then today there is a decrease in the supply because you want to hold off on that inventory and give more up later on. Obviously this is not really going to be great for anything that's perishable, because food, for example, even if the price goes up in 3 days, you need to sell it because it may go bad and then be worthless. And the last of the 5, similar to on the demand side, is price change of a related good, but here this is in production. So you have substitutes in production, meaning companies, for example, computer companies, when they produce a computer, they can produce a laptop or a desktop. So I want you to think of this. If the price of, let's say, a laptop goes up, what should happen to the supply of desktops? So if the selling price, you're the producer, if the selling price of laptops goes up, you're like, wow, let's make more laptops. Therefore, would it make sense to supply fewer desktops? Opposite way should be true. And a little different here, complements in production. That means when you produce one good, there's actually another good that directly can follow from it in production. So for example, a cow, when you put the cow for use in producing meat, so say for the cow, you kill the cow. When that happens, you have more meat, but don't you have more leather? So suppose in this case the price of meat increases. So of course you want to supply more cows. Well, if you supply more cows, you kill more cows, then with the slaughterhouse you also have more skin, more hide to make leather. So therefore, even though the price of leather has not changed, when the price of meat goes up, there are more cows put to slaughterhouse, therefore there is an increase in the supply of leather. Another example could be cream and skim milk. When you process milk, the fat, the cream comes to the top, so not only have you more milk, you would have more of the cream as well. And lastly, just a review of section 4.2. So change in quantity supplied. The only factor that causes a change in quantity supplied is the price of that good, not price expectation, not price of related good, price of that good. That is the movement along the curve. Whereas a change in supply, which means a shift in supply, it's due to an external factor, not relating to today's price change of that good. And as we saw, there are different reasons why this would occur. So the book here, increase in supply. Right, so it's those factors. Change in cost, change in technology, number of suppliers, price expectations, and price of substitutes and complementary goods in production. So these are all here with the correct direction. An increase in supply, so this is a movement from a rightward movement from S0 or S0 to S2. The other side, a decrease in supply, which is the leftward shift. that is going to be the opposite direction of those same reasons. So please make sure you understand this. Start working out the textbook and workbook for both 4.1 and 4.2. You may want to try to redo this page on your own, maybe make a blank copy and see if you can figure it out as well.